Hey everybody, welcome to another week of Served Grass Court Edition. After having watched the tournaments this week in Halle in Queens, the women in Berlin, Birmingham, and elsewhere, I'm going to say something really controversial, guys, straight off the top. We are so stupid for not having a longer grass court season. We are absolute morons in our sport for not having a lead-in, a surface that lends itself to playing different styles, not the same monotony, where we just run side to side for hours upon hours upon hours. There's nuance to it. There is many. So the fact that we don't have a Masters 1000 in the lead-in to Wimbledon, and we have 3 leading into Roland Garros, and we have an 8-week clay court season. You could literally play 7 events on clay before you get to Roland Garros. And it's just not the case, and it puts a huge premium on having to play well and get matches, right? Like let's use, and we're going to get into the Racket Rundown brought to you by Wilson. Right now, obviously, Sinner looked fantastic in Halle, but let's put this scenario here. Right now, we're going to get to the part where we all agree with each other and nod around in a circle to the room of Sinner, best preparation he could possibly have in Wimbledon, and now is probably co-favorite, depending on what news we get from Novak Djokovic this week, right? But Sinner also lost the first set of the tournament 7-6. That could go sideways, and then we would be like, oh, the hip, I don't know. Like what? So it is just, there's just such a premium on grass court tennis, and we'll take a deeper dive. But first, I mentioned Novak. I want to get into 2 icons of our sport, and time is seemingly coming for both of them, Novak and Andy Murray. I was very concerned about Novak's knee a couple of weeks ago when you heard that he had surgery post Roland Garros after his round of 16 match, which was a long 5-setter. Any operation at that age, I was super concerned about. I didn't think Wimbledon was a possibility based on history of Earth and knee operations 2 weeks before Wimbledon. JW, have you seen any of the videos that he's been putting out as far as a recovery? I'm stunned. It's just like, it's the most Novak thing I've ever seen, where we're doubting him. It's him against the world, and all of a sudden he's doing one-legged hops on a knee that he just had surgery on. I mean, I'm like crazy impressed. Is that normal to you after having been around him forever, or for a bunch of stories?
You underestimate this guy at your peril. No, I got a text Sunday saying Novak's going to use Monday as his day to see if he's fit for Wimbledon, and I didn't put it out there. I didn't retweet. It seemed so preposterous, given what at least our dinosaur brains know about what knee injuries tended to be like. And then all of a sudden you see him Monday and he's on the grass. And if you did not know that this person had surgery within the last 3 weeks, you never would have known it from this video. I mean, I don't know. It sounds crazy. We sort of lay this out and game it out. You say 37 years old, at his last event, he literally got surgery in the middle of the tournament on a knee. We're talking about him at Wimbledon? Are you crazy? And I don't know. I mean, I think as we record this, he probably plays, and as long as he plays, he's a contender. So we've gone from surgery in Paris, the first week of June, to July 1st. This guy will be a contender at the next major. That's you know what? Just sidebar. This is why it's also silly to compare eras. I mean, this would be a ridiculous conversation, and much less. I mean, we talk about strings, we talk about rackets and technology. You know what? Medical science has also made it pretty silly to compare Andre and Pete to Roger and Novak. But anyway, I'm agree with you. Let's if he's in the draw, he's a contender, and if he wins this event, I think you could very well make a credible case this is the greatest male grass court player of all time.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. The point about surgery and comparing generations is not something I have thought of, and you're absolutely right. When you used to have a knee operation, you had a 6-inch scar running down the front of your body, and you might be cooked forever, and you're definitely cooked for 6 to 9 months. And you're losing range of motion, everything else. So this is fantastic. And also showing up on Monday and I'm going to say another crazy thing. You ready? You ready for this? This is just gonna make my life living hell. Showing up on a Monday and hopping around and maybe on Tuesday he goes and hits some balls, and maybe on Wednesday. Come Thursday, the reality of 5 sets and sprinting. If he hasn't, like, hopping is different than sprinting side to side and having a 22 ball rally on a slippery surface. So hopping and showing up is not the same as playing the highest level tennis, in the hardest sport in the world in its biggest venue. Crazy, right? Isn't that nuts? Isn't that just, wow, crazy? I'm firing on all cylinders today. I hope Novak plays. I am amazed that we're seeing what we're seeing. And I also got in trouble for saying, basically saying it's his choice to put out videos, which obviously brings attention, brings speculation. We talk about it more based on the information we have. He is providing a lot of information right now. Is that crazy? There is a world where he would have wanted to be secretive about it. He is showing us he's wanting to present an image of strength and health going into this off week. That is a choice. We could, if there are no videos and no commentary, we don't know anything. And maybe our conversations are the same as they were 2 weeks ago, right? He is inviting us in for a look into his recovery through putting out content. Isn't that crazy for me to say?
One minor pushback.
Okay, great.
He's practicing at Wimbledon. So in theory, anyone with a media credential, anyone could, in theory,
sure,
have still photos.
The videos were coming out 5 days before he arrived at Wimbledon.
Right. No, I mean, one thing that's weird about this whole story is that he said this to my face. I mean, this is not just gossip. The Olympics were the priority this year. He hasn't won that gold medal that he wanted to. This was going to be. I don't think it was at all a given that he was going to play Wimbledon even at peak health.
Oh, I disagree.
Play Roland Garros. He's going. I mean, I know there are financial reasons, there are legacy reasons, but if you are hell bent on winning an Olympic gold and it's a clay tournament, anyway, I think it's extraordinary that he's back. I think you raise a good point too, though. I mean, best of 5 tennis going backwards and forwards. We saw all week players slipping around on the grass, as one tends to do. Those videos were a great source of encouragement, and I think not that anyone doubted Novak and his resilience, 5 years ago, much less 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's not surprising at all. But I do think that when he takes that first slip, going side to side on wet grass, it makes you a little. It's a cringe moment.
Yeah, I think so too. Listen, I mean this absolutely 100%. There's not even all I want is to be wrong with my concern about his knee. I would love that. I would honestly love that, because the tournament is better when our greatest champion is participating in it, in any tournament. I want to see his brilliance on grass. I think he is so much further along IQ-wise on grass than all but 3 people in the entire tournament, and he has the skill set to turn that IQ into results, right? I want to see that. 1,000% I cheer for health with every single player on tour, especially people that move the needle and make the interest in tennis greater. End of story. A weird story around one of my favorite players to watch. My respect for this player is endless. Andy Murray played a great first round match, and then he came out against Jordan Thompson in Queens, and it just didn't look right. Like, his body looked like he had just discovered feet. Like, it didn't look normal. He came off and said, I just didn't really have control. To me, as I was digesting what he was saying, the symptoms were, I'm going, oh, it's probably a nerve issue, like shooting pains, numbness, but that can be worked out in a pretty short amount of time, adjustments, treatment, everything else. He ended up having a surgical procedure to remove a cyst from his back. So tread cautiously here after the last week of my life. But that's concerning. And all I continue to want is for Murray to have the send-off at Wimbledon, because I don't think people understand, even casual tennis fans, how monumental him winning Wimbledon in that country was at the time that he won it. And all I want is for this extended respect to have that moment to say goodbye on his terms. And as of now, it doesn't look like it's going to happen based on this procedure on his back that he had this week. The timeline, I'll say this, the timeline seems very short for him to be able to participate in Wimbledon. And I know he'll do everything he possibly can. Unlike Novak, I don't think he needs to be perfect to have a send-off. I don't think it's like, I need to feel like I can win the tournament or I'm not participating. I don't think that would be his mindset. It's purely projection. I don't know. He's earned the goodbye. He's earned every possible advantage, scheduling, anything that they can do to accommodate him, I think should happen. Judy Murray sent out an interesting tweet, and I won't read it verbatim, but the gist of it was, they didn't want the news of Murray's injury getting out. That was not by design. Apparently, the way she said it was, it sucks when someone's private medical information gets leaked by someone that we trusted. I don't know who that is. I don't know what that is. I do know that you have to be pretty pissed off and rightfully so, by the way, if that's information that is in-house on your team and all of a sudden it's for consumption and also people listening, you don't understand the microscope he is under at that tournament as a Brit. I remember I played him in the semis in 2009. The first 6 pages of the sports section were all about Murray. What he ate, he had a banana 37 minutes into his practice. Miss Lippy's car is green. He likes to drink milk at lunch. There's like 4 people out there that love Billy Madison that are laughing their asses off at that reference. Yeah. Anyways, so that sucks. And I hope whoever leaked that information gets called out in a very, very public manner, because that's just frankly kind of fucked up. Am I missing anything on that, JW? Did you hear anything differently?
No, I couldn't tell if she was upset with the journalist or somebody within the camp for betraying a confidence. Judy Murray, we should also point out, is this force of good in tennis. This is not some hothead tennis parent. This is someone who's very informed, very well regarded. She clearly was upset to have written that. I think you really have to be careful with injuries. It's personal. It's personal autonomy. We have laws in this country about revealing information about medical health. The flip side is, if you're the journalist and Andy Murray's body is preventing him from playing Wimbledon, that's newsworthy. So I'm not sure where the sort of breach of confidence came. The whole thing is just really unfortunate. I mean, if anyone deserves to go out on his terms, and I think this is sort of one consequence of players playing older, right? That Roger beats Pete Sampras at Wimbledon and it's a passing of the torch moment, and Andy Roddick wins the US Open the same year that Pete Sampras doesn't play. And sort of we have these natural sort of lineages. And I think that when you play to your late 30s, you don't have these torch passing moments so much as you have players saying, my body's preventing me from defending my title. My body's preventing me from entering the draw, which is unfortunate. If Andy Murray deserves anything, it's a grand ceremony. I think we're all sort of working under the assumption this is his last Wimbledon. So if, in fact, he's not able to play, it's quadruply unfortunate. But yeah, I just think we all need sometimes to be a little more graceful. A with retirements, which you and I have spoken about a lot, and B with health and physical injuries. It's deeply personal. A lot of times the athlete themselves doesn't know. I'm not sure why a member of his team would have sort of leaked something of this nature. But again, like you said about Novak, I mean, you can have your favorite player, you can root for player X and against player Y, but I think we all ought to be in agreement that we should all root for optimal health. And in this case, you hope. I mean, it does seem like she left the door open that Andy might in fact play, and that the information wasn't accurate. So maybe that's what we should hang on to. This seems like there is still a chance he'll be out there.
Yeah, she said FYI, not ruled out yet at the end of the tweet.
Yeah, they came out after this news broke, and the way I read it was that it was like it wasn't going to happen. And they came out and released from her side, his side, basically saying he has not pulled out of the event yet. So he is not officially out, but it seems as if it's a toss-up, seemingly at best right now. For that, I hope Murray gets his moment. If you have if we have some American sports fans and we're talking about like the Red Sox finally winning, the Cubs finally winning, this is that times 20 as far as the way that this country digested his win when he finally broke through for the first time since the 20s. And won that tournament. We're talking about Trafalgar Square, full of people, public viewing areas, Hyde Park, screens up, hundreds of thousands or millions of fans showing up to watch huge screens around the country. And this guy delivers against Novak Djokovic and delivers the Wimbledon title that they haven't had on the men's side. Obviously, Virginia Wade has won and is a great champion. But the seismic moment when he won cannot be understated. He deserves the farewell, the thank you, the respect. And another thing that's worth noting, right, is we think we always make up our minds very early about people based on their on-court personas. Early on in Andy Murray's career, curmudgeon, argue with the umpire, yell at the box, break stuff. He would win and he was British, and he would lose and he's Scottish, depending on, the tone. And now I think we forget that there was like this polarizing, 5 years for Andy Murray before he became the statesman of sanity in our sport. Whether it's a social justice issue or he's not scared to give his opinion, and whether or not you agree with it, it's an informed opinion and it's based on, some collection of facts, and it's not just emotion and, bullshit. So the fact that he has changed into this person who's universally respected, and we've gotten to know him past his petulance on court, I want that moment for him too, right? Because maybe we didn't like him when we had to celebrate his winning Wimbledon, especially in his own country. And now he is adored, and rightfully so. Knighted, Sir Andy Murray. We hope that you have health and that you get your moment. I'm sure you're very, very appreciative because you're 100% not listening to this right now. But we respect you. And anything else there, John?
That's very well said. Sometimes the media and public perception get it right, and sometimes they whiff. And the Andy Murray we all knew from the start was nothing like the perception. Do you want to make it a trifecta? If Murray and Djokovic do not post, and of course we hope they do, it will mean there will be one former Wimbledon men's champion in the draw, and it's the guy who won it last year and is still quite young. But we haven't talked about Rafa, who announced he probably wasn't playing Wimbledon. It means he probably will never play again. And yet he is playing a clay event in Sweden in a lead up to the Olympics. Are you what do we make of his absence, especially if he now knows he wouldn't have to go through Novak if he were going to win a third title?
Yeah, and as far as Rafa goes, I mean, I didn't have Bo Stad on my bingo card. You rewind to where we're talking about him 3 months ago, and I'm like, okay, he's probably going to wrap it up at Roland Garros, the Olympics. I get Bo Stad because he needs some match play between first round of Roland Garros and the Olympics. So in a micro decision, it makes a lot of sense where I can't say I'm frustrated, but where I'm like, oh man, like opportunity missed for us. Like I'm super selfish as a fan right here because this is going to get clicks and it's going to, his fluency and his IQ on grass, we quickly forget that 2 years ago, a lot of people had him penciled in the final. He was supposed to play a semifinal against Nick Kyrgios. He tore an ab muscle against Taylor Fritz. Still gutted through 2 sets to grind out that match against Taylor Fritz. Kyrgios gets the walkover and plays that final that we remember him playing against Novak. What's often forgot is that he didn't win a match in the semis, and Rafa was rolling people that tournament. He had won the first 2 slams of the year, was in the semis of the third one, going for like the calendar year slam. There was conversations of that. Wimbledon, with the way that he knows how to play on it and with the lack of expertise, because it is such a short timeline for surface and nobody grows up on it, right? No one has been playing on grass since they were 5. You don't learn on grass because the ball doesn't bounce. So, like, I think Rafa's like possibly his best shot to get to like a semi or final or like have a day could be Wimbledon. Like, his backhand, he can just rip. He doesn't play those extended points on grass. He can control the middle of the court more. He forces himself to step in on returns. All of the things that he has to do by virtue of his body not working as much anymore, shortening points and all that. Those are all the adjustments he already made on grass. So I hate it that it looks like he's not going to be a part of it. He hasn't officially pulled out. He will. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was just going to say, after, Roland Garros, after his loss in Roland Garros, he had talked about how it'd be hard, given what's been going on with his body, to transition from clay to grass, but then to make the transition back. Can you kind of give some insight into that, especially going through what he's going through physically?
So here's the thing. With him, his hip, everything else, confidence and movement. People are like, clay is softer on your body. You're going to get less injured for all of us chuckers, right? For me, that's not the case because I don't slide well. I'm not a natural mover on clay. Maybe it's softer, but like I can predict what's going to happen when I move on a hard court or a grass court. It makes sense to me. My body works. The instincts are there. So I don't know if it's just a matter of Rafa feeling completely confident with movement on a surface versus obviously the most unsure surface is grass. So maybe it's just I'm not going to give up a look to play on my beloved surface, which is totally understandable. None of my opinions about Rafa still being great on grass mean that I disagree with his decision. I can't speak to his body, right? I can't do that. I'm just saying I think he could win matches and make a run at Wimbledon if he chose to play. But I get it. Like, switching surfaces sucks on the body, right? All of a sudden you go from building up reserves on clay, grinding out matches, your body work, and then all of a sudden you're dealing with like lower back issues on grass because you're bending and it's twisting and that's not native to him. So listen, he made the right decision, but in my mind, I'm going, I have had the thought, I don't know if I fully believe it, but like that might be his best bet to like win a slam or get to like a last 4 right now, even including clay, so it's based on what his body's capable of doing and the movement, speed, gets a little help on a serve, all the adjustments that he has to make for his body now are kind of adjustments he has to make on grass anyway. So we'll see him in Bostad. I'm just happy we're going to get to see him again. I'm going to enjoy that. That'll be great. I hope we see Novak at Wimbledon. I hope we see Murray. I hope he gets to say goodbye. At this point, nobody's worried about saying goodbye to Novak. We're going to see him play more, and it looks like he's on his way to health quicker than I could have ever anticipated. And that's great. Any more parting thoughts as far as those 3, JW?
No, that was great. Let's get around Racket Rundown.
Racket Rundown brought to you by Wilson. Our friends at Wilson. Listen, it was an exciting week. I love the grass court season. I request on Tennis Channel to cover Queens just because I love talking about grass court tennis. I love the changes. I love the adjustments you have to make. It's fun watching people learn in real time, which is what you feel like you watched Jannik Sinner do this week in Halle. 3 setters, first 3 matches, then rolled the last 2, beat Zhang in the semis, and then a very, very capable, probably like, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say Hurkacz is top 5 or 6 grass quarters in the world. Beats him in the final in straight sets as well. How he is moving aggressively, and Halle is the slipperiest grass court there is because it's half indoors. It's like a domed roof where you have to have direct sunlight for a grass court to be perfect. Halle doesn't have that benefit. Right? It rains. They have to protect. They have to put an event on. So the back of Halle is a slip and slide. And how hard Sinner was moving in the corners, sliding into shots, and then turning on a dime. Like we all know he was a former skier when he was young. And I was actually playing golf with Kevin Anderson this morning, and he goes, that ski thing has to matter on grass when you're kind of getting in and out of cuts. He goes, that's just like a natural thing for him. He looked great. He's holding at an insane clip, the serve wide. Like, even if you know he's serving wide on the deuce side, what do? You cover it, you firm it up. If you're not going line, which is like a low percentage shot, he's in the middle and he's taking you the other way and he can square it up. Couldn't have been more impressed with the run that Sinner put together in Halle. Tommy Paul was fantastic in Queens, well-deserved U.S. #1 now. Winning that final against Lorenzo Musetti, who everyone predicted was going to be in that final. Am I right, John?
Because of that Italian tennis run we're on. Interesting. I mean, and Tommy Paul really earned that. There were some interesting results. He lost to Korda last week, then he comes back and beat Korda. That's a nice title for Tommy Paul. I think Musetti's I don't think that's a crazy finalist. But no, I think, just one other, do you think so? On grass, sort of a slick, not the worst mover, one-handed backhand. No, you know what else? There's some years where the number of tiebreak sets played on grass is 30% higher than other surfaces. Sinner and Tommy Paul as well, to either win tiebreak sets or to lose a tiebreak set and then reset, which is what Sinner especially did really well. I think some of these are about, Tommy Paul, great athlete. Not a big surprise that Tommy Paul's performed well on grass. But I also think I think there's more mentally that goes into winning grass court matches. I mean, you know this yourself. I mean, you stand up there and it's 6 games all, and the next 4 minutes is going to determine whether what we did for the previous 70 minutes was a positive or a negative. Tommy Paul, some nice tennis. I saw some nice, I watched the, I saw Draper, but what I also saw was a lot of some nice mental toughness, which we haven't always seen from him at majors, especially.
Yeah, and Tommy Paul deserves so much credit, okay? The book on Tommy 5 years ago, frankly,
I'll say it, yeah. You really want
was he was full of talent and didn't treat this like a job. Was Tommy Good Time, right? Like that, and then Brad Stein.
Tommy Knucklehead is the way they called him.
Yeah. So, but like, let's give credit where, and that's not the only reason I would mention the negative is to point out the progress. Right? He is such a pro now. You never worry about him being tired in matches. His body holds up. Your body doesn't hold up when all of a sudden you're winning more matches than you ever have because it's unprepared. Your body holds up, switching surfaces, semi in Indian Wells, semi in Rome, winning Queens. This is a well-rounded player. This is someone who can play defense. This is someone who can transition forward. This is someone who he's not Tyson from the late 80s. He doesn't just walk up and start throwing haymakers. He has learned this nuance, how to deal with his own game, how to be the most effective version of himself, and he is an absolute professional now. Not a lot of guys figure that out midstream. A lot of guys have regrets when they start out the way that Tommy Paul did. A lot of guys look back and say, gosh, you know what? I should have done X, Y, and Z. Credit to him. Huge props to Brad Stein for not even just like saying it's easy to tell someone work hard. It's harder to do it in a way that is communicative and to get buy-in and to get buy-in over an extended period of time, right? This wasn't like they started, Tommy was, I don't know, he's around 180. I don't know what it was. But certainly not someone you looked at and go, yeah, he has the discipline to be top 10. And now it looks like he is going to be top 10 because of that discipline. JW?
Yeah, Brad Stein's track record speaks for itself. You sort of do the correlation and causation, but I think that's a really good point you raised, which is credit to the player too. Part of it, the player's the one who's got to execute, but also credit Tommy Paul. I'm sure there were a lot of mornings with Brad Stein that weren't nearly as much fun as he had 6 months, 18 months prior. I'm sure there were a lot of things Brad Stein said that weren't as nice to hear as other people you could surround yourself with. When there is a coaching relationship like that, you credit the coach. There was, Darren, you sort of do the math, graph it out on, Darren Cahill's and Sinner. You can sort of just look at the results. But I also think the players ought to get a lot of credit, especially young ones, for sticking with coaches that are hard asses and don't always tell them what they want to hear. And this is, this is really a sort of an unsung run for Tommy Paul. You know, made the semis in Australia a year and a half ago, but he hasn't had that one crazy result. Hasn't won Indian Wells the way Taylor Fritz hasn't had the Francis run at the Open where he sort of hijacks the place for a few days. He's done this steadily. He's done this with really sort of versatile tennis on a variety of surfaces. He's done this sometimes after really bad losses. This is really an underrated American tennis story.
And not to mention, he busted his ankle in Miami. He had a speed bump in the middle of his year, right? So to come back, and it just, I'm going to be effusive with praise for Tommy Paul right now, because there was definitely a time in his career where I would have gone, this guy's just never going to get it. Hashtag invoke. Mike, you're the only one that got that. But there was a time where definitely I was like, this is going to be, you know, a fun time guy. I've always liked Tommy. I've known him since he was a kid. Great guy. Even when I was disagreeing with his decision-making for being the best tennis player he could possibly be, I've always liked Tommy. He's one of the nicest guys, easiest guys. You won't hear anyone say like he's like kind of an ass in the locker room. He's just a great guy. He's just a nice, laid back guy, good sense of humor. But now he's put the pieces together, and I'm really happy for him. I really am. I'm really, really happy for Tommy Paul. I'm glad he got that American #1. I hope he gets to the top 10. I hope that the next step is developing into someone where it's not even a pleasant surprise when he's in the semis of a major event. And I think that's a reality. I love what they've done. Props to Brad Stein. You mentioned Jack Draper. He was a huge story, obviously, in London. Before I mention him, because I also want to get to Alcaraz and how I don't care that he lost in Queens. That affects my Wimbledon, I guess, predictive thing for him, 0. So you mentioned like there are going to be some listeners who are like, wait, players don't like it when their coaches are hard ass. No one's like that. I literally had. So my old coach was my last coach was Larry Stefanke. I had a woman player who was at the time maybe had like a run where there was a lot of successful majors. And then I want to say she was still top 10 or thereabouts, but like a big star, and called and was like, it texted and said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about Larry. And Larry ended up going for a day, but I want to talk to you about Larry. And the question was, I was like, oh yeah, Larry's great. And the question was, yeah, but is he like super hard? Because I don't know that, like, that's not really what I like. And I'm going, well, what are your goals? Like, what do you want? And they're like, oh no, something like bad. I don't want to, like, if I don't really want to practice for a couple of days, I don't want someone who's like, you know, being a hard ass about it. And I'm like, okay, well, I think differently after this conversation. And I said, like, well, he might, I don't know, you give him a try, but he might not be the guy for you, because yeah, he's coached 4 former #1s, so he's going to expect a certain level of give a shittedness. There's a t-shirt for you, Mike. So moving off the guys, and we'll get to the women's draw. Berlin was strange. A lot of stops and starts in the matches. Sabalenka played one match against Kasatkina, looked great, and then was in the middle of a match and said, nope, I'm done. Rybakina, I don't know if it was, she said abdominal pain. I don't know if it was stomach issue. 3-1 ripcord. Jabeur lose the first set to Coco, says nope. So all of a sudden in the final, we have Jess Pegula beats Coco. Pegula obviously has had a rough start to the year. And she told me when we were kind of chatting earlier in the year, when she had a lot of things going on as far as switching coaches, everything else, she was asking my opinion on things, and basically, what mistakes have you made? Which I thought was a really great question. And I was happy to share, but kind of has had a bunch of stops and starts, found some momentum, and Charleston played pretty well, but was still searching. I think Jess Pegula, the fit for her game on grass is phenomenal. And I said it 5 days ago on Tennis Channel before she won Berlin. I'm like, she is going to be tough to deal with. She can control the middle of the court, ball flight, can distribute both ways. Props to her for getting back, winning. This is a big title. Beating Coco, beating Kalinskaya, who was frankly on one this week, like just crushing the ball, saving 4 match points in that final. This was the exact type of week that Jess Pegula needed to get through to feel like she was a part of the tour again, right? Like, I am in it. There are rain delays. I have to come out, sleep on a 3-1 lead in a breaker or 4-1 lead in a breaker against Coco, come back, finish that off, start the final 25 minutes later. Like, it was random, lots of questions asked. I thought Jess Pegula was great. I love the way that her game fits on grass. We conveniently forget that she was up 4-1 in the third set last year in the quarters against the person who ended up winning the tournament. I love Jess. I hope that she feels great going into Wimbledon. I think she could be a real threat on the surface. And on another cool story, Ajla Tomljanovic has also been hurt a bunch. Played a challenger last week. Something that Sophie knows something about because she's watched the movie Challengers, so she's an expert in it. But comes back, makes final after a bunch of stops and starts. She has battled injuries through her career, but especially the last year. Great story. Makes the final. Can't quite get over the hump. Was 0-5 in finals going in. Is probably the best player that hasn't won a title on either tour. Hopefully she gets it, but props to Putintseva, who said before this week she didn't really like grass. I think she likes it a little bit more now with that title in hand in Birmingham. JW.
It's interesting to me what sort of has predictive value and what doesn't, right? So I'm with you. Like, Carlos Alcaraz loses to Draper, talented lefty.
I don't care.
Don't care, right?
Nope.
But there are other grass events where you look at context and you look at where a player's been or what this has done or what they've showed you in a match. Jessie Pegula she beat both the doubles team, right? Didn't she beat?
She beat Siniakova too,
Siniakova, and then she beats Coco. That has more predictive value. I think it's interesting there that some of these results and tune-ups, and also, I think as these majors get more and more important, it means that the tune-ups have much, there's a variety of meetings for different players. Some players just want matches. Some players don't want to get dinged up before the big show. But it's interesting to me what you just said, because what you're saying, and I think it's really valued, but it's really nuanced, is that different results have different significance for different players. So Carlos Alcaraz, you're not going to rip up your draw because he lost to Jack Draper, but Jessie Pegula, all of a sudden, someone in need of wins and got a bunch of good ones. Hey, maybe we should look at her as the top 10 seed she's going to be.
Yeah, totally. Alcaraz he needed queens last year. I watched his first round and then I watched his third round at Queens a year ago. When I watched his first round, I'm going, this guy doesn't know how to play on grass yet. And this phenom, by third round, I'm going, oh, okay, well, that was easy for him to figure out, right? He needed that last year going into Wimbledon because there is this aha moment. Pete Sampras talks about it. He's like, I thought I hated grass, and then it clicked, and I got it. I understood it. I wasn't frustrated by it. Bad bounces. I knew how to play. I knew what to do. I knew how to move. I knew when to press. I knew when to not, and it all clicked very quickly. Sinner made the semis last year, so it's not as if he didn't know how to do it, but this week was different. Like, you saw him problem solving for grass in real time. Carlos Alcaraz played a great first round against Cerundolo, looked amazing floating around the court, doing all of the Alcaraz things, goes up against Draper, who had won the week before. Draper served him off the court, right? Carlos still finding his footing. He should have. He went to Ibiza after Roland Garros and hopefully partied his ass off because
don't worry about that. That's
good because he deserved it. Because he deserved it, and he didn't need the grass preparation like he did last year. He knows how to play on the surface. He is the defending Wimbledon champion. He needed to go get a couple of matches. I'm not saying if he wins Queens, fantastic, even better. I'm just saying that tournament is not nearly, to John's point, that tournament is not nearly as important to him as it is to Jess Pegula, who knows she can play well on the surface. She knows the same things we do, but you need to create that confidence. Confidence is king. Confidence is queen. She needed that tournament more than someone like Alcaraz needed Queens this time. Simple as that. So props to our winners. This has been Racket Rundown brought to you by Wilson. We are going to take a quick break, and on the other side of this, we are going to get into Wimbledon. I'm going to tell you why it is probably my favorite place on planet Earth, and I still get sick to my stomach when I walk through the gates. But we're going to get to that afterwards. We're going to tell you all the greatest things which make it, in my mind, the greatest sporting venue in the history of the world. I just love it that much. JW will tell you what it's like from his perspective. I'll tell you what it's like from mine, and we'll get to that after the break. Thanks for listening to Served. And now we get to the part of the show where we discuss Wimbledon. And kind of, I guess the best way to describe the way I'm thinking about this is why it gives us the feels that it gives us. It's just, it's so perfect. Everything about it, in my mind, is perfect. The courts, when you walk in and they haven't been played on, they're mowed a certain way. They smell a certain way. You see the same people working at the tournament because they're members of the club. You feel that, and not in a stuffy way, in like a welcome to our home, welcome to our living room type of way. And oh, by the way, we're going to play the biggest tournament in tennis also. I just fell in love with it very, very quickly. I absolutely love it there. I think my favorite day of the year would be the first day that you get to Wimbledon. And I always kind of played pretty well at Queen's. And so I would always consciously stay in central London for Queen's because I wanted them to feel like separate events. Most players, when they get to Wimbledon, they rent houses and you're all around Wimbledon Village, and I could do 30 minutes only on Wimbledon Village being the best place on earth. I wanted it to feel separate, and I wanted to feel like moving day on that Monday where we're going to Wimbledon, that excitement, that buzz. I didn't want to burn those feelings during Queen's. I wanted them to feel like a very, very distinct change. Other people did it differently. Leighton Hewitt would also, he also won Queen's 4 times. He would rent the house out at Wimbledon and drive back and forth to Queen's. So from central London with no traffic, I don't even want to know why people say that because there's always traffic there. About a half hour, 45 minutes outside of London with traffic. Who knows? It could be an hour and a half. Just take the tube. It's easier. But it's just magic. The traditions, the players, the winners, the rules they have, but then someone telling you a rule in a very friendly tone. Like I got called in to I used to call it the principal's office. It was Alan Mills, God rest his soul, one of my favorite people, who was the tournament referee forever. Reebok had made me some shoes. There was too much black on them, and I was like, I got nothing. Like I can put white out on them, and I can adjust it. That probably won't look as good. And he goes, what did he say? He always had an amazing way of putting stuff, and he would call me in, and like he kind of had this, smirk that, I think he knew that I could take a joke. And he goes, well, contrary to popular belief, we're not completely irrational. Just don't do it next year. I was like, I love you so much. You're the best. Like, it's that type of thing. And I think people view it as this stuffy place. It's just, they have these traditions, and I never felt intimidated by them. It felt like a warm hug to me. I always thought it was cool. How do you feel when you walk through there, JW?
Did you just say this was the greatest sports venue in the world?
Yeah, I did.
I said that very cavalierly.
No,
but you said that, and I'm like, oh shit. Well, what could top that? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know if you. I think that's a defensible position.
Yeah, and maybe you like the Masters, or maybe you like Lambeau Field, or maybe you like Wrigley Field, or maybe you like a soccer stadium that I've never been to, but there's no way you can definitively think what I'm saying is nuts. In a world where apparently everything I say can be considered nuts, that can't be considered nuts, even if you don't agree with me. I fully believe it.
I'm tired of your Churchill Downs disparagement. No, I think you're totally right. And I think I have one of my hot takes on Wimbledon is that, I mean, it's tremendous. Again, nobody goes to Wimbledon and says, people go to the Indy 500 and they say, okay, I can check that off my list, and now my ears are ringing and I smell like smoke and I don't need to do that again. Nobody goes to Wimbledon and says, nah, didn't live up to the hype. But I always, what Can you name me another property that passes up more money in revenue, right? So there's no naming rights. There's no McLaren on center court. There's no crazy secondary ticketing market where, I mean, they pass up so much revenue prioritizing tradition. And I feel like that makes it more valuable. So the fact that it is not the Barclays Bank center court, I'm sure they could get $25 million a year if center court were sponsored. Easy. I'm sure courtside signage. I'm sure letting you wear your black shoes. But I feel like it's almost more valuable because of the money they pass up. And it also sort of weirdly, you mentioned the Masters, or we talk about some of these sort of elegant events, and it's weirdly populist. Like you can wait in line in a queue and spend 29 pounds, which is whatever, $40, and sit 2 rows back of Roger Federer. I mean, it's very elegant and tasteful, but there's also this kind of rowdy, open to the public. Everyone that wants to watch tennis should be able to. They have a great program where you can leave your ticket on the way out, so somebody that waits in line can then take it and take your spot. It's weirdly not elitist. It's in the old version of populist, in the pre-2016 version of populist. It's weirdly a people's event for all the elegance. I also love the three. At one point, I think there were 3 signs, and it was the brand of the tennis ball. It was Rolex had some deal, and they had the official clock, and it was something called Robinson's barley water. I don't know what barley water quite is.
We finally got to one of the parts of Wimbledon that isn't great. Robinson sucks.
All right, but
they're not, Mike. I'm sorry. they're not going to sponsor. Like I would rather. I mean, the fact that like if you gave me, like Olipop is obviously fantastic. If you gave me an Olipop and you put it outside and filled half of it with lake water, I would still drink it over Robinson's.
It's someone said it was like what you take before your. Have you had a colonoscopy yet? Have you had a colonoscopy yet?
No, I was actually going to make that the next episode.
So, no, but you look at the U.S. Open, right? And you get these emails sometimes and they say, we have a special, non-alcoholic craft beer sponsorship category. It's the official tequila of the U.S. Open. The players, it's hot. And all of a sudden out come the Continental Airlines umbrellas. And there are about 80,000 pieces of signage and brands. It's just a different way to run an event. But, Wimbledon, for all it's sort of, everyone thinks it's snooty and it's elegant and it's tradition. It's actually a really cool people's event. I think the grass is part of it. I think the fact that I think what you said is really interesting. There are a lot of rules, but they're not obnoxious. They're just you sort of go with the tradition, but you're not considered like a Philistine if you run afoul of something. It's sort of the perfect distance from London, where it feels like you're in the English countryside, but you say it's 25 minutes on the tube if you have to get to Hyde Park. The fact that, I'm curious, just talk more about your experience as a player, because you're not there as someone who's made a bucket list trip. You're there to do work. What do you think differentiates it most from your run-of-the-mill event, as someone who's actually there to work and not there because they're a fan?
For me, it was like, so some of this is based in nostalgia and memory for me. I remember, for me, it was a tradition watching stateside. It was breakfast at Wimbledon, and it was always a massive deal in our house. It was even 7 years old. I understood it. I got the gravity of it. I knew the champions that had won it. I completely bought in on the history of it. And it's a weird thing because my relationship with Wimbledon ended up being a fantastic one. Like I think I probably got along more with the fans there than I did in New York sometimes, right? Like and on paper it shouldn't have worked, right? You got the brash American who breaks stuff and yells at people and wears his hat backwards sometimes, and it was an unlikely relationship that ended up being so positive. And all I wanted, was that. But wait, for me,
can I ask you a question before we go further, and you can confirm or deny this or cut it out?
Sure.
Were you invited to be a member despite not having won the title? Did I hear that right?
Yeah. Yes, I was. Yeah, shockingly. So the rule is, for those who don't know, if you win Wimbledon, you become a member of the All England Club. So people think like, Wimbledon is the tournament and that's how it exists. The All England Lawn and Tennis Club is a year-round club that people use, like a sports club, and it just happens to, you play Wimbledon there. So like similar to the Masters is the tournament and Augusta National is the club, Wimbledon is the tournament, and All England Club is the host. They host Wimbledon. If you win, you become a member forever. And so that's kind of the way it works. You win, you're in. You don't, you're not. And so, I lifelong dream, I would have loved to have been a member there. Obviously you win the tournament, you come close and it doesn't quite happen. And so I got a call in, I remember I was staying at Fish's house in LA, actually. I don't know why we were out there, but we were out there and I had a call. I think Tim Henman texted me and said, Phil Brooks would like to talk to you, who was the chairman of the All England Club at the time. And said he'd like to talk to you, just tournament and whatever. And so in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool because I'm now close enough to the game. I think I had been out of it a year and a half, maybe. I think it was about then. It was early 2014. And so I was like, oh, he's probably going to ask me surfaces, locker rooms, player experience. I'm not biased anymore. He knows that I absolutely love this tournament and this venue. I was certainly never shy about telling that to anyone. And so I get on the phone. I was like, okay, random phone call, but I think I could probably add value. It wasn't crazy to think that he would call and, want some time. And he asked if I would like to be, no, he asked, what was it? Would you be offended? He was sensitive to the fact that I hadn't won it, obviously. And he basically, in spite of tradition, would you consider being a member of the All England Club and, All England Lawn Tennis Club? And I was stunned. One of the happiest moments of my life. Like I was absolutely stunned. It's not something I use enough. It still hurts to go there sometimes. I'm going to go there casually just as a member to hit some balls in late August, which will be great. But yeah, and I started learning that I developed a really good friendship with, so like the head locker room attendant during Wimbledon in the champions locker room, which the seated players can use. There's a friend of mine named Doug, and he's this English guy who was into baseball scores. And so we'd come in, I'd talk about my fantasy team. We'd, bullshit. I'd hit putts, rain delays, for 3 weeks every year, we would ham it up, and I just really enjoyed him. He became a good friend of mine. And I learned after the fact that he really pushed, that for me, kind of from the inside. And so you never know who's watching. You never think that, Doug is going to be able to push you, in that direction. And so I was pretty humbled. I was even more humbled when I found out it was not from him, because I don't think he had the decision-making power, but apparently he had voiced his support, which was really nice for me. Because he's the one who's looking at players when there are no cameras, right? And he kind of sees the balls and strikes of it. So I was pretty honored. I don't know that my life would be much different if I wasn't, frankly, but I sure as hell am happy and honored that I am, and it's still weird to me that I could jump on a plane and go there and hit balls anytime. But it's it's certainly a place that, it's pretty nice to walk through. If you see any of your analysts when you're watching with a pin on their jacket, like a Wimbledon pin, that's a member's pin. So they are members. So it's a pretty cool thing.
A great story. And just how cool is it, but also how nicely does it speak of Wimbledon, that the fact that the locker room attendant lobbied for you clearly had some heft and some weight.
Yeah.
Great story. I hope you make more use of it.
Yeah, me too. And also I got to say, someone else who was like the ultimate gentleman throughout that whole process was Tim Henman. Obviously a member, has a big, voice in the room there, however many times semifinalist. He was great about walking me through, the protocols, and I knew it for a long time. And then I played an event at Royal Albert Hall where all of a sudden it was made public, later that year, in the fall while I was over there. And so I got to take Brooke, my wife, there to, have a meal with the chairman and walk her. So the walk that I had made a million times from the locker room to center court, where you're walking through a club. It's not like an arena like the U.S. Open where you're underneath kind of, the underbelly of the stadium and concrete and this and that. And she got to see, like, I got to walk that, like the walk that you do when you play in a final, where, the famous quote, "The door's open." We got to make that walk together, which was really cool. And I think it was a cool experience for her to see as well. I love that day. I hope to do it more. I think hopefully as my kids start understanding it a little bit more, they'll think it's as cool as I do.
Do you pay dues?
I don't know.
All right. So the reason I don't want to spend too much.
I don't know. I really don't know.
No, but in keeping with our theme about how cool this place is, the dues are like less than my YMCA. I mean, the dues.
Yeah. The fact that I don't know means that if I am paying, that it's not really causing me much stress.
I think people don't realize that you're right. They use this as a club year round. So the interview room, which is quite nice, in November, that's where they're going to show whatever. Billy Madison, that's like the movie night for the club. You sort of forget that, like, Mrs. Nussbaum plays doubles on court 18 a few days after the tournament's over. That's a great story. I'd never heard that.
It was. I think there's two other. If I'm in, gosh, I hope I don't get this wrong, but I'm 99% sure I'm right, and we can edit it if not, so you'll never hear it if I'm wrong. Two other players, Ken Rosewall and Lendl, were invited to join the club. Even though they didn't win the singles. I think that's right. Anyways, so that's Wimbledon. I think I kind of flirted with it and then didn't do it. My single favorite day of the year is the first practice day. So as the tournament's going on, the grounds are heaving. There's Henman Hill. You walk through the outer courts. You can just walk up to most of them. Like there's a side with stands, and then there's like between courts, you can walk between them and just kind of hang out between and check out the matches. It's like equal parts the most perfect place you've ever seen, and then it's like a tennis festival in some parts where you can hang out on the hill and watch the big screen. And they just the way that they are able to balance tradition with, I don't know, experience where you don't feel uptight when you're there. And maybe my experience isn't everyone's experience, but that's always the way I felt. Like, you can buy a grounds pass, go to Henman Hill, have a day at Wimbledon, see the entire venue. Like, you're watching the screen outside of court 1. You look, 45 degrees to your right, and you see the shape of center court. It's just so cool. And so the first day you get there for practice, you normally get an hour if you're a seated player to hit on site, and then over at Arangi Park, which, by the way, another nice touch, to hit at Arangi Park, you don't have to wear all whites. So all of your warm-ups, all your practice sessions, it's not as if you're, taking your starchy whites out to go warm up for a match. So again, a touch that they get perfectly right. Arangi Park is, basically a big row of grass, and they're all together. There's no space between them, and that's where the players warm up, practice, everything else. But during the tournament, to get from our locker rooms are kind of in center court, right? So like second level center court, you walk down this long staircase, a couple of flights, and all of a sudden you walk underneath all of Wimbledon. So there's 30,000 people up above you, a floor above you. You're walking underneath them to Arangi Park. Through, the kitchen doors open up when you're walking, like it's where all the, deliveries are, the infrastructure, 18-wheelers park down there. That's how they get the whole thing. And there's, the players can walk down below there, and then you walk up the stairs, and there's tons of fans hanging over the entrance to Arangi Park when you're coming from underground. And it's so much fun because you'll be practicing on like court 1 right there, one of the first couple courts where the public can watch practice. It's so cool. But then you'll hear the fans just start going nuts, like it's like the Beatles, and he'll be like, Serena! And that first fan who sees the person who's walking up, and then all the fans just start going crazy. It's like this tell, because all of a sudden you're underground and you peek up, and all of a sudden your face is showing, and you look up and you just see the sea of people kind of leaning over the railings, just going crazy. So it's weird because you have this, like, the traditional space of center court where there's decorum, tradition, and then you go to Arangi Park, and it's the Beatles, right? It is the seeing your favorite players up close. You have to walk directly in between all of the fans like you're on a staircase and they're on both sides and you're walking right through, high-fiving, doing the whole thing. So that's during the tournament. Before the tournament, I'm a pretty quick walker. I'm a fidgety person. I can focus on something for about 4 seconds. The walk from outside of center court, where you walk down where the public will be 5 or 6 days from then, the slowest walk through Wimbledon when there's not anyone on site. There's not a person there besides the players, and players alone can't fill that place. It can't make it feel full. That slow walk through Wimbledon, past Henman Hill, past the video board, over to Orangi Park, just casually walking into Orangi Park, and you know that feeling is going to go away and be replaced by something that's magic also. 5 or 6 days later is just maybe the best walk in all of tennis. And I say that with respect to walking out through the clubhouse for the finals, which is also, I could talk for a half hour about how special that is. But it's just amazing. They get so many of the notes right. It's the place of my biggest heartbreak in this sport, and it simultaneously makes my heart full every time I think about it.
It's I think we have to do a special episode on more behind the scenes. This is great. I've been there a million times. I haven't heard half this. It's like you're describing like half opera, half minor league baseball game.
I guess that's right. Producer Mike.
I was just going to ask about the dress code. Can you talk about the history behind the kind of all whites? Like why? It's just always been that way, huh?
It never bothered me, so I never really thought to ask why. Like I just kind of liked it. I know there was some, Andre didn't like it at first, and I'm sure he came around after he won in '92. He literally wouldn't go play there a couple of times because he was anti-dress code and he was the rebel. And they even won, he won them over, and, Wimbledon won him over. I know he speaks with reverence about it now. I just, most of the time, and I've said it on this podcast before, doing something just because that's the way it always been done, I think is normally dumb. And in Wimbledon, it's just perfect to me. It's just, I don't know why.
What did Alan Mills say to you, though? Because I think there's something there, too. They're not unreasonable. So there was a tradition of having that open Sunday, and now there no longer is. And they've made some concessions, especially understandably to female players about all white. They've bent a little bit on that. And I think the players wear different shoes, and the players give a little, and I think the club gives a little too. And it's actually a very nice kind of meeting of reasonable people. I got to bounce. You know what this means? It means I'm going to have to wait till next time to congratulate you on the Serving Up Dreams Award you're going to get the first night of the U.S. Open. I got to jump on this other call. Shit.
It sounds like a good time for you. Just sign off. Like, do we run a show now, Producer Mike, where people just just fucking leave whenever they want?
See you later,
pleasure, guys.
Yeah, all right, John. Cool. Big gulps, huh? Well, see you later.
And there he goes.
Jeez, and then he's gone. Like, I mean, I'd question his work ethic if he didn't work 16 hours a day.
To button up the white thing, I just Googled it real quick. A lot of people allude to the fact that in the 1880s, when the rules were written, it was because it was so people didn't sweat to death, because it was unseemly to see the sweat stains. But also, they were probably playing in like wool. It's probably the cooler way to play.
It's horrible.
It was all whites, but I think it looks pretty good. I like it too.
I think it's awesome. And over time, to John's point, like it used to be all white, and then they would like allow a little stripe, and then they would allow a little. So it's almost like a bend don't break defense on on everything. Anyways, I love Wimbledon. Someone else who loved Wimbledon right in my face, oftentimes, Roger Federer. Lost to him in 3 finals. He won it a million times. Something that's interesting about this podcast, and I'll say this and then we'll go to break, is that Producer Mike, Social Sophie, before this podcast, it's funny because we're watching like tennis fandom expand in real time, right? To where like, Mike now knows how to say Laver Cup, which is cool.
Maybe.
Which is, well, whether or not he does it, he knows the right way to say it now. But Social Sophie on the other side of this break, back with another movie review. She did Challengers. She watched the Roger Federer documentary. We have not talked about it. We kind of have the framework and skeleton of a show when we write it. but we always want the first conversation to actually be when we've pressed record. So 99% of the things you hear are the first time that we have talked about it with the group. Social Sophie back on the other side to review the Roger Federer documentary. Dun, dun, dun. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Served. It's like she's Siskel and she's Ebert, dated reference for anyone under 30, but Mike understands, I'm sure. Shots fired. I don't even know the name of this documentary. I just call it the Roger Federer documentary. I know it's the last 12 days leading into Laver Cup, otherwise known as Laver Cup, and when he retired. And my memories of that going in before Social Sophie goes into it, one of the moments that caused me actual human tears was just Rafa flying in for a doubles match to play with Roger, to be a part of the goodbye, them literally sitting on a bench, the whole world watching. It's as if no one was there, just crying out of respect for each other and out of respect for kind of their outsized presence in each other's lives. That meant so much to me. I had to go on air on TC Live right after that, and I almost didn't make it through the show. Like it was very hard, and I think they're both gems of humans. As much as I kind of joke about Roger, him kicking my ass, lighthearted, we have a friendship that will live on forever. We still text, we check in. He has done many things outside of the lens of the camera. For me, charity events, different things here and there, just always an extremely thoughtful, present person who I imagine it would be very easy to get lost in the tornado of being Federer, right? I've seen it. I've had a first row seat to it. I can imagine what his reality is like. But Social Sophie watched it, and I'm curious because I know, like all of our history, Sophie doesn't. I think she's heard about our history, but wasn't there for it. Wasn't a tennis fan during it. Is probably too young to have given a shit about it in real time. But I'm curious, Social Sophie, what did you think of it? Not having kind of knowing, I guess, Federer's reputation, having seen him, not having been a real time fan of his when he was playing.
Well, they really set the scene when it opens with a shot of him like right in front of his trophies. And you're like, okay, he's probably really good at this thing that this documentary is about. It's just him standing in front of them. That's the opening shot after the shot of him like destroying you at Wimbledon. Like they kind of open it with.
Oh, they open with that? Is that true? Oh, yeah. Great. I didn't even know I made an appearance. Great.
With those two things, you're kind of like, maybe he's good at this thing. So you get that right away. And like you said, it's a lot less about his career and more about his retirement. Like they're counting down those final 12 days until the Laver Cup. And it kind of just takes you through this like agony that he's going through of like, I really don't technically have to retire. It's a choice, but I know it's the best thing. I really don't want to do it, but it's like what's best for me. And you really see him kind of like bear the weight of he knows his role in tennis as this sort of like, I don't even know what the word is. Like he's the biggest guy. He knows it, but he also carries it really humbly, but he's very aware. And so he knows I need to make this statement in a way that respects my fans, respects the sport, respects all the people that I played. And he does that really, really well. And like his announcement that he makes and then every move that he makes until the Laver Cup and then beyond. And so watching anyone love something that much, like it could have been about river dancing for all I care. Like watching someone love anything that much is so interesting. And
that feels like a reach. I'm just saying, maybe a little reach.
Is.
Like
and maybe it is
big
why river dancing?
But if it was like the
guys
best
here, but
guy in river dancing, I'm gonna watch. Like if it was someone who
Michael
loved
Flatley.
it that much.
That's the shit that
true.
I know.
That's the doc, by the way.
100% true. The lead river dance guy, the Federer of river dancing, the Novak of river dancing is Michael Flatley.
How do you know that?
I don't know. It goes in and it doesn't go out.
I'm so glad I said that.
Insane.
That's
Michael
crazy.
Flatley.
I'm
Look
so
it up.
glad
Confirm.
I said that.
It's Michael
no,
Flatley.
I don't have to because
immediate believe you.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
But no, if the guy's that good at it and they love it that much, like it was like addicting to watch. I watched it twice. You guys give like the best homework. I watched it Friday night and then I watched it last night again. And then it takes you through. What I thought was really interesting was that his kids were also touring with him through maybe like the last half of his career, I guess. Which just all I really know about tennis is you, and that wasn't the case with you. And so it was interesting to see like his kids really go through the process as well. They were bawling, crying, blubbering at the Labor Cup, and it's because they were so much a part of it. And I thought that was really, really nice to see. And he honored his wife so well, just kind of saying, you know, she really could have stopped me and probably wanted to stop me years and years ago, but she didn't, because I love this thing and we both love this thing, and it's been the center of our whole lives. And then obviously there's the Rafa angle where they're just, again, blubbering the entire time. I really wanted them to show the shot where they're like holding hands and crying, but they never did. That's like my one qualm with the whole thing, is that I never got the shot of them holding hands and crying. But beyond Rafa, like he also does the same thing with Novak and Andy Murray and even the players that are coming in behind them all. Like he really pays so much respect. A lot of the times it like wasn't about him. The documentary that was about him, which is probably just a testament to who he is.
Yeah, I read a quote from the documentary, and it's probably something that we all are guilty of in that generation. He said something along the lines of, I didn't give Novak the respect he deserved when he was younger. I don't think I did either. When he came in, he was the guy breaking up the Beatles, right? Like he was this new guy who didn't care that these guys were greats. He wanted to take their lunch. Like he was there to steal titles from them. And I like that Roger said it out loud. You know, I made the same mistake. You know, it's just, you know, someone comes in. I probably early in my career presented badly to some people too. Like I just did. Like I probably pissed some people off. I probably got in the faces of veterans of tour during matches and did things that I wouldn't have done or didn't do 6 years later. I like that he showed the humility in even a documentary about him. These are all the things that I got right. They're very obvious, but also we're all flawed. This is what I got wrong. And I like that he said it out loud.
Yeah, he pretty much said exactly that. And then they show him having kind of this moment with Novak at the end where you don't know what he told him, but Novak kind of breaks down crying. And it's really sweet. He you know, kind of whispers in Andy Murray's ear, whispers in Rafa's ear, whispers in Novak's ear, and then he sort of breaks down. And I think he probably said maybe exactly that like he kind of proved him wrong in the end.
Yeah.
And
I think that
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I'm thinking out loud here. And I think and I know I was bitter Betty earlier in this episode, just with there's, you know, certain sects of sects, SECTS, not SEX. There are certain sects of fandom where the word fanatic exists for a reason. And I hate it. My number one thing that I hate online about tennis is that because you like someone better, you feel the need to drag down others when the players don't view it that way. Obviously, there are peaks and valleys. The intensity involved. I've had run-ins with people I've had run-ins on the court with Marty Fish, who's like a brother to me. Like, you need to understand as fans that there's a silo of people on earth who fully understand what you do, what you're going through, how you go about it, and how hard it is to be elite at a worldwide global sport. So you cannot like someone's entourage. You cannot like people in the orbit of these insane rivalries. Respect wins. It always wins. You can disagree with someone. You can yell at someone. You can say things that you mean in the moment that you get over later. The fact that the moment you're describing of Roger saying something to Novak and Novak having the respect for Roger, and they've had bumpy moments. They're well documented. if those two can push everything aside and say, you were great, you're a reason why I was great, why the fuck can't fans do it too? If you want to support your guy, support the things that your guy respects. Support the people that he respects. You don't have to like them. Respect needs to be a baseline. You cannot say, I like this person, so this person's a piece of shit loser. Like, that's just not true. It's not true. It's not true. I know these people. It's not true. Save the shit. It's not me against you. It's us, and we are all better for it. Go ahead, Sophie. How does this end? How do his kids go through it? What are his takeaways post Laver Cup? I'm sure they had like an exit interview. And then I'll kind of just give a couple of my thoughts.
They say in the beginning, or he says when he's about to make this announcement, that he wants to make it really clear that he's not saying, I'm retiring and I have no idea what's next. I'm retiring and maybe you'll see me again, maybe you won't. He wants to make it really clear that he wants his role in tennis, whatever that means, to continue on, and he wants to stay so involved. And so they do leave it pretty unknown, to be fair, other than what I just said, that like he wants to stay in the sport in whatever capacity he possibly can. So, but I mean, they did leave it kind of open-ended. Yeah,
I mean, he's part of the ownership group. He created Laver Cup with his agency.
That was really interesting.
There. Yeah, so he's there forever. And props to with Tony Godsick, who's also a friend of mine, who's Roger's agent, lifelong agent. They created a really special entity, and like the fact that this documentary, that's almost the perfect venue for this documentary to follow, because they started Laver Cup literally, and this isn't their opinion, this isn't their thesis, this is my opinion of what I've seen from the event. It feels like they started with what will be the best possible TV product that doesn't need to chew up 3 weeks of the season. 3 days, all the superstars played around the globe, inside access, listening to Rafa coach Novak on a switchover. Like, it doesn't get better than that, and vice versa. It just doesn't get better than that. The game will forever need Roger. They just will. He's the biggest crossover star that I've witnessed in tennis. He's like, it's impossible for your Q rating to be as gigantic as his was, and also not find anyone who dislikes him. You can find someone who dislikes everybody. And a lot of that's based on team sports. I like the Yankees, therefore I hate any great Red Sox. I like this, so I hate that. Fine. At a certain moment in time, like, my fans didn't hate Roger, and all he did was ruin my life for 10 years, like, on court. Like, it's just, I had this weird, when he was made that announcement, I remember being on Tennis Channel, and the one thing that I said, and I still mean it to this day, is I think the biggest compliment you can give someone after you've been a father is, I hope my kids grow up and act like this person. Not famous, not as successful, just treat people with the level of respect that he does. And I saw it. I mean, a couple of examples, like I watched him one year at Wimbledon before one of our finals. And I'm like a nervous wreck, and he's like, playing fucking games on his phone, like couldn't be calmer, which was annoying in its own way. But, you have, a couple of players who aren't as good. Maybe they're like in a mixed doubles final, or they're not Federer at Wimbledon. Like, they can go to Starbucks, right? They can go to Starbucks in Wimbledon Village and probably be left alone. Regrip their rackets in the training room, which everyone shares the same training room when you're stretching and doing all that. Just a bunch of tables lined up. One entrance, one exit. Regripping rackets, and then they just drop their trash on the floor and walk out. And I watch him having a conversation with someone, see that, and just casually go over and pick up, 3 old grips and a bunch of plastic and just throw them away while maintaining his conversation. Not saying like, I would have done it, but I would have been like, these fucking pricks. Like, I would have had some commentary about it, which was bitter. Casually did it.
He just did it.
Put it away. I'm Roger Federer. I've won this tournament 7 times already, 6 times already, whatever it is. And he consistently did stuff like that. He knew the name of the person who was looking after the tournament in the locker room each week, right? He just carried himself with a certain grace and a certain, I always get asked, are you jealous? I'm generally not really a jealous person. Like I'm happy for people's successes. I wish I would have done things, but I don't look back and say, I wish I would have won 10 Grand Slams. And maybe that's why I didn't, but I look back, I'm like, I would have loved one more, right? People say, are you jealous of Roger? No. The only thing I'm jealous of in the history of our relationship and all the titles and the lopsidedness of our general being was his ease of operation and how he could do these things and be in a good mood. And there's no chance he was in a good mood every day, but he faked it better than any person I've seen, him and Rafa, frankly. But Roger had to carry more of the burden. He could give press conferences in like 18 languages, right? He was the first one. He was the greatest before the other two came and became the greatest and then the greatest, right? And so I think he had a lot of that. And he was the guy that was immediately the statesman after Pete and Andre. Like he had to carry that burden, and he had other personalities, and then the youngsters, and then Rafa comes along, and I play a lane of this brash American, but I'm nowhere near. No one's near him. No one, even for a moment in time, is near him. And I'll tell you this.
Sorry.
Go ahead, please. No, I can tell anecdotal stories all day. There's
just a funny moment in the locker room where it's like Team Europe at the Laver Cup, and it's Roger, Rafa, Berrettini, I think Tsitsipas, and they're all just kind of like chatting in the locker room, and they get on the subject of that Rafa Sonego match where he calls him to the net about his kind of delayed grunting. Do you remember that? Surely. And Berrettini is saying, oh no, he doesn't do it on purpose. He doesn't do it on purpose. Trust me, like I've played with him since I was a kid. I know him really well. He doesn't do it on purpose. And he's sort of like arguing back and forth with Rafa. And Rafa's like, no, for me, he did it on purpose. Like I promised for me. And it was just a funny little glimpse into the locker room. Like they're kind of going back and forth at it, but still being super respectful. It was just like a nice little glimpse into that.
And those are the conversations that go round and round, where if there was a camera, people would, they'd create a beef between the two differing opinions. Like, it's just so stupid. Like, I didn't do it on purpose. Maybe he does a little on purpose.
Yeah.
It's a little on purpose. Maybe it's a little on purpose. We'll do this, and I could tell, nice gesture Roger stories for an entire episode. I can't wait to watch it. I wanted to, let you watch it and kind of just speak from my own personal experience. I'll tell you, I got inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2017, and with our good friend Kim Clijsters, amongst others. And I'll give you one guess. When the first text message the day that I got inducted was waiting for me when I woke up, and it was from
Roger.
It was 3 paragraphs. Wasn't a have a fun day. It was 3 paragraphs. Our history. I appreciate your friendship. This is well deserved. Yada, yada, yada. First one out of the shooter. And like, he shouldn't know the day that someone's getting inducted. Like he knows that in the morning, it's not an accident. You start early, enjoy the day. Like it was just it. And there's a lot of examples of that. So I'll forever, I can't even be a little bit bitter about Roger. I just can't. He's proven to me too many times the person that he is. I'm happy that a lot of other people, including new fans like Social Sophie, are getting a look behind the curtain at him and in the way that he exists. Anyways, I can't wait to watch it now. Social Sophie, do you have any closing thoughts about it? What's your like biggest takeaway from this doc, or if you have a couple, shoot your shot.
I mean, first of all, I don't know if this was their intention, but it really made me want a docu-series on his career. Like it made you want more of him. And so hopefully maybe they'll do something like that in the future. Takeaway is, I mean, he talks a lot about being a ball kid in Basel, and it's inspiring, and you go like, I mean, I guess you really can do anything if you're extremely good at the thing that you love. And also work extremely hard like he did. And it sort of leaves you with that sort of inspirational taste in your mouth of like, wow, he really did just love this thing so much, work extremely hard. And now he's the face of tennis. So
yeah.
How many stars, how many little Andy Roddick faces do you give it out of 5?
There's no reason not to give it 5. Like there's nothing bad about it. Like they do that. They call.
Well, maybe the only reason is that you're going to get fired. No, joking, obviously.
5.1. Andy faces.
5.1.
Yeah, just like an earlobe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We'll put that on the screen. The best moment truly is when they're about to make the announcement and his agent first calls Anna Wintour to warn her that the announcement is going to go out. And I just loved that. She's
rightfully so, a massive Roger fan. I got to see that whole vortex too. Like Roger hosted Met Gala last year, and again, a gracious thing, invited Brooklyn and I, which like obviously we weren't, Brooke's been before, but I've obviously never been invited. And we sat, like, he's hosting and we literally sat at the next table, but like our chairs backed up to each other. So inevitably we end up leaning back and talking about, God knows what. But it's just thoughtful. And so I've always certainly appreciated those gestures. And I can't wait to watch it. I love that there were those moments between our greats. Including Andy Murray, by the way.
Yeah.
With Novak.
We didn't even talk about him. There's so much great stuff.
He's phenomenal.
Well.
I mean, respect wins. There are moments we don't like each other. There are moments where we disagree. We play for some pretty big things. Respect wins. At the end of the day, you look backwards, respect wins. I'm glad they caught those moments because maybe people will believe us when we say things like respect wins, and we make mistakes. We judge things the wrong way. We also extend grace to each other because we realize we need each other, and the most important parts of our work lives involve those people, and that should always remain special. I was going to do a whole thing about sleepers on the men's side for Wimbledon. How I think the women's draw is open and there's 20 names that could potentially win. Where does Iga Swiatek stack up? What we will do, producer Mike, I think if you'll approve this, is I think we start with that for a quick conversation before we do our live draw show, which will be out on Saturday on T2. So I'm going to spend, you've been so nice, and I think it feels wedged in because we've kind of gotten to this Wimbledon into Roger thing, and there's a certain tone to it. To get back to balls and strikes feels a little weird. So I'm not going to do it. But with your permission, I think we start before I actually look at the draw. I think I'm going to tell you, these are the names I'm looking for. I'm really interested where they're going to fall. And then we let it rip, Tater Chip. What do you think, producer Mike?
I think it sounds like a great idea. Yeah,
cool.
And so the T2 show will be 52 minutes, but then the full extended draw special, because we will go longer than 52 minutes.
Yeah.
That'll be on YouTube and where you get your podcast.
Yeah, so just for those of you that didn't catch our Roland Garros preview show, we do it a little bit differently. Most people digest the draw, look at it, have a day with it. You're getting our first raw reaction. Look, so Wertheim will look at it. I'll look at it. Then we start filling in our winners, and all of a sudden we're at the quarters, and it's like, oh, okay, well, all right, so these are my 8 quarter, and then we walk it through. So the first time that I'm looking at the draw, you will have the ability to listen, and then we will fill them out to the best of our knowledge. I'll do a quick little preview of these are the names. I want to know where Berrettini is going to land in the draw. I want to know, X, Y, and Z. Siniakova is going to end up in the draw. Katie Bolter is going to end up in the draw. Who's going to play? So we'll go through all that stuff. We'll spend 5 or 10 minutes on it, and then we are going to get into the live draw show. I will be doing it remotely. I will be traveling with our family, so the background won't quite look the same, but the content will be just as average, I assure you. So thank you so much, Social Sophie. Great job. Thank you for watching. Appreciate you breaking it down for us. Sounds like it's a rave review. Everyone should go watch the Roger doc, and we will catch you next time on Serve. Thanks for listening.